This is a special meeting of the Scio Township Environmental Sustainability Task Force, November 14th, and I need to start record. Hang on. Before I forget.
Recording in progress.
This meeting is being recorded.
Thank you. All right. I'd like to welcome everyone to the special meeting of the Scio Township Environmental Sustainability Task Force. We have invited members of not only the public, but all the Board of Trustees and other committees and commissions to join us. The Planning Commission has an 8 o'clock meeting afterwards, so they're actually in the meeting hall. That's why you see this. And if folks are in the meeting hall and have a computer, you're more than willing to join the Zoom meeting, because we are going to break out into breakout groups. We will hold a breakout in the meeting hall for people that don't have their computers. And so I'm going to call us to order, and I just need the task force members to move and the adoption of the agenda.
I move the adoption of the agenda.
Okay, moved by
Marty Mayo.
Marty, and supported by
I'll support it, Jim.
Dana Doherty. All those in any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, we're moving ahead with the agenda. And just so people know, we don't have a specific public comment period tonight. We encourage the public to go ahead and join a breakout room when I open the breakout rooms, and that's how we're getting comment from everyone who's joining us tonight. And there'll be 5 breakout rooms, and they're all kind of according to the 5 working groups. And each of those working groups are going to give a presentation, and the presentation is available on the township website if you'd like to get a copy of it for reference. Okay, so with that, hopefully I can share and not too many people will come in. So what I'm going to do is give a brief overview of, let's enter the waiting room. Hang on. A brief overview of the path that we've been on, and then we have a presentation.
Recording in progress.
A presentation by our C's team, who kind of led our community engagement. Then each of the working groups will give a brief presentation of kind of their goals, and then we'll break up into groups to get some feedback, and we also welcome feedback via email and so forth as we're moving along. And then we'll also say where we're going, kind of the schedule for the future. And how come? Okay, there we go. Making sure everybody's in before I start the presentation. So, right. So, kind of the framing. I do want to say thank you to the. One more person came in. There we go. All right. In July 26th of this year, the Township Board, if everyone in the room could make sure they're muted, that'd be great.
I think some online are not muted.
Oh, and online, if you could mute too. There's a little bit of background noise. That's you. Okay. it wasn't doing it before, but if anybody has, you make sure your volume is all the way down on your computer. Yeah. It has to be muted and then turn your volume down too. Yeah, that should work. Okay, so Scio Township commits itself to a just transition to net zero greenhouse gas emissions due to township operations no later than 2030 and to the same goal for all sectors of the township by 2035. So that's our goal. That goal aligns with the goal that was adopted by Washtenaw County. Where have we been? We started actually in the summer of 2021. We had 2 interns, Michelle Black and Katie Ports, who did quite a bit of research and kind of laid the foundation for the task force, which was appointed by the Planning Commission on July 26, 2021. So I think it's kind of interesting that we had the goals adopted exactly 1 year after the Planning Commission appointed the task force. And on the slide, you'll just see the current members and the 5 working groups that have been working. And this is a totally volunteer task force. And I have to say, this is the only township I'm aware of that is addressing their climate action plan in this manner. So thank you all for the work that you've put in. Our 2021 master plan was adopted in November of 2021. And as a part of that master plan, we included the development of the environmental sustainability plan that would be ultimately incorporated in that master plan. So this is set up for this plan to actually be a part then of our master plan moving forward. Then joining us in January of 2022 is our SEAS team. This is a group of students who'll be presenting tonight, and they've been developing the whole community engagement portion of the climate action plan and actually helping out each of the working groups as they're developing their goals. So thank you, and you'll be able to meet them tonight. And then finally, as we talked about in the beginning, July 26th of 2022, the Board of Trustees did adopt the climate resolution. So that's kind of where we've been, and we'll kind of move forward now with each of the groups presenting some of the goals and the work that they've done. And we are hoping, this is pretty text heavy, so hopefully you'll download the presentation and give it some consideration and give us feedback in addition to the working group breakouts that we'll have. So natural ecosystems and local food systems, Janine, are you?
Yeah, hey Jan.
Welcome.
Thanks. It's good to be with you all virtually here in the Zoom room and to see several of you in the township office. So I'm Janine LaPrade. I have been a Scio Township resident for a very long time, it seems, and I currently live adjacent to the Fox Science Preserve in the old Fox barn. So it's great that I've had a chance to work with several folks, Tim Redmond, now Marty Mayo, and former Celeste, and a few others on looking at what some goals might be for how to protect our natural ecosystems in our township and really develop out our local food system. So from the food system side of things, we have a set of goals that are about 1, promoting regenerative agriculture, and 2, really building out our capacity to grow local food and have kind of the distribution network that we think our township needs in relation to what kind of local food might be available from a county perspective. So the first set of goals here have to do with really looking at the township's role in promoting regenerative agriculture. So that, I think, our first step is to get a better understanding of what our local agricultural infrastructure is. So that would be beginning to map out the mix of farms we have, what food is produced locally, while also understanding to some extent what we think local demand and needs might be. also are recommending that we look more closely at policies that the township has responsibility for, that would promote or encourage more regenerative agricultural practice use by farms in our township, looking more closely at what is getting in the way from a policy perspective of local food production and distribution, really wanting to see us partner more with some of the policy making that's happening through our planning and zoning, land preservation, and other committees or structures that we have in place here in the township. Again, from a governance perspective, again, some of this is also important to be connecting in with at the county level. So we've noted the importance of collaborating with Washington County's Food Policy Council and the Environmental Council as well. The next slide, we've got just a list of other institutions we could be considering partnering with. We've also named explicitly just a few more things that we think kind of undergird a really healthy agriculture and local food system here in the township. And so that is looking more closely at just not only farm-based practices, but really residential land use practices that affect food and agriculture production, but also affect our rivers and other waterways in our township and the county. We also wanted to just focus a bit more on local composting efforts, and I know that's tied into what one of the other working groups is looking at. And then the last thing here is just, again, helping residents look more closely at what they might do from a gardening and a food production perspective on their own homesteads. Under natural ecosystems, we kind of focused this on how much of our counties or townships land is in preservation. So we focused on a goal for that of aiming toward 35% of our land in preservation by 2035. I can't remember exactly where we are, but thankfully the new millage should help us continue to move in that direction. We also lifted up the importance of focusing on tree canopy coverage because of the role that trees and other natural areas play in carbon sequestration. And then we want to make sure we're doing what we can to engage local businesses and community members or residents in helping us meet these goals. Next slide, please. We also, in this area, have looked more closely at what we're calling green infrastructure. So it's important for us from a policy perspective to be looking at the amount of impervious surfaces we have in our county or our township, and really looking at what we need to do to shore up that green infrastructure relative to the cement or brown or whatever color you call the gray infrastructure. And then just the importance of working with the Planning Commission to look more closely at ordinances that affect all of this. Dan, we could move to the water section next. Okay, so here we tried to get a better understanding again of what role we think the township plays in helping protect, preserve, and restore our water infrastructure, or some places like to call it our green-blue infrastructure, our blue infrastructure. And so we've named a few ordinances and policies that we think are important to look at. And we also have identified just some things that we might do in terms of raising awareness of residents' role in any of this, and things that residents and businesses can do in their homes or in their businesses, like in terms of looking at water conservation practices. We've got a point in here about developing incentives for residents to be able to conserve water from an irrigation perspective. That would probably also apply to farms. And then really looking at supporting more native planting in our township. Next slide, please. Okay, and then I guess the only thing from this area I'd like to lift up is just, again, the importance of us working then from a road perspective on, with the Washington County Road Commission to make sure that practices that are in place really do support our goals here in terms of protecting, preserving water infrastructure and related resources, and then partnering more closely with the Watershed Council and other organizations who are looking at not only water preservation restoration practices, but also just looking more closely at some of the wastewater issues that we might be facing here in the township. So that's the set of things we worked on. Dan.
Okay, Dana.
Hello, everybody. We've got buildings and energy next. First slide, please. There we go. Buildings and energy represent a significant portion of greenhouse gas production throughout our planet. We don't have exact data on what Scio Township produces, but one could estimate it's probably in the neighborhood of about 40% of our total greenhouse gas production. This is both from a direct and indirect sources, direct being embedded carbon in building materials or the combustion of natural gas primarily for space and water heating. Main source of indirect would be electricity production by our utility company, DTE. Further estimated by the EPA that about 60% of the greenhouse gas comes from the indirect, the electricity, and about 40% from the direct sources. We do know in Scio Township that, based on a building stock analysis, that residential represents the most significant source of greenhouse gases. We've got about 60% of our square footage in Scio Township that is residential buildings, and we estimate that produces over 40% of the greenhouse gas in the township. So that's a problem. What do we do about it? Well, the first thing we think should be attacked is existing systems. How can we increase our community and township energy efficiencies, make our existing homes better contributors to a net zero energy future? We have started to benchmark township operations, and there's also been effort at the township level, which I'm sure probably most all of you know. Townships entered into agreement for installing solar at the fire station. I think the township has undergone some improvements to electrical fixtures and lighting, and is also investigating some HVAC changes that may have some efficiency. So work is underway already at the township level to meet these goals, which, as you can see in this slide, set a rather aggressive target of 2030 for carbon net zero. Next bullet is to connect educational and financial resources with the Scio residents and businesses to reduce their energy and municipal water use. This can't be understated. We have to educate our citizenry as to the benefits of additional efficiencies. There are programs available. DTE certainly is one that comes to mind for this purpose. So it's going to be very important for us in the implementation phase to create an efficient manner in which we can disseminate knowledge, and so people can make a practical, realistic decision on their energy future. Next bullet is adopt a time of sale reporting and energy use and cost. We want to keep score of how we're doing, and this is one way in which we can do that. If we can get data at the time of sale, we can evaluate that over a period of time and hopefully be able to show the progress that we're making towards meeting our goals. The added benefit of this, of course, is to create an awareness at the time of sale of energy and the importance. So hopefully it would create an incentive for homeowners to upgrade their homes in that regard. Develop and promote local additional carbon offset programs. This is an item that also appears on the county's list. And it can be quite important. I noticed in the EPA's summary of greenhouse gas by sector, they have it with and without carbon offsets, and they indicate a 13% reduction if you include existing carbon offsets, a significant number. So we want to look at creating an offset program along with the county. Additional land canopy preservation, regenerative agriculture, tree planting, and preservation. One note on this is in a professional journal, I saw where the first high-rise building in Colorado is being built in Denver. It's going to be net zero. Now, that's pretty difficult for a high-rise because the structural elements are typically high CHG, structural steel and cement and concrete. So that makes it very tough for these type of buildings to be a net zero. And they're doing this, I won't say largely, but they're doing it with carbon offsets by reforestation in some of the remote areas of Colorado to assist in meeting that goal. All right, energy, buildings, and infrastructure. Decarbonize the built environment by eliminating and, if needed, offsetting the use of fossil fuels. Develop buy clean policies and specifications by 2024. Again, this is in line with the county who is looking at establishing carbon pricing and using it in their purchasing process. Next bullet is develop and implement building electrification plans for township buildings and infrastructure by 2030. As I said, this work is well underway. And hopefully will continue so the township can be a leader and an example to the citizenry. Encourage and require all new developments to be primarily electric, net zero energy, and use low embodied carbon materials. Yes, this is the electric movement. And obviously this is really dependent on DTE's progress in meeting their alternative energy generation. Currently, they're looking at, I believe, 85% by 2035, 90 by 2040, and 100 by 2050. We all hope that they can improve on that. All right, connect educational and financial resources with Scio residents and businesses to transition from fossil fuels. Again, as I said before, the educational part of this cannot be overemphasized. And then lastly, again, coordinate with the resilient Washtenaw plan efforts. Increase local renewable energy production. Set a goal by 2023. First goal is to expand Ann Arbor's Zero Solarize program, a residential rooftop solar. If you're not familiar with this, is a bulk buy program that provides discounts for solar equipment. Next item is connect educational and financial resources for on-site solar generation for Scio businesses. Again, there are opportunities out there, and we need to provide in a safe and efficient manner this knowledge and work with our business community so they too can join in on our effort. Decarbonize the power grid. Encourage enrollment in Michigan Green Power or similar programs throughout the township. Well, guess what? I enrolled today. I had questions about whether or not I wanted to enroll in this program. Originally, there was a cost associated with that, and I didn't philosophically agree that there should be. DTE has eliminated that. Now you can enroll in this program at no costs. So it seems to be, at least on a trial basis, a pretty easy decision to make. Plan and implement community solar in the township. We believe that there are opportunities in our township to install some community solar systems. We believe that this, perhaps we could work with our land preservation group on identifying sites throughout the township. We don't think that land preservation and a community solar are mutually exclusive. So we look forward to working together on accomplishing this. There does need to be some movement at the state level. There are two House bills, 415, 416, that have been languishing in our energy committee for a year and a half. So we need to, hopefully lobby a bit so that we can move forward and allow this type of community solar to be developed. One great example of this, by the way, is the city of Ann Arbor's development of the landfill at Ellsworth and Platte Road, an excellent use for this property. And then advocate for 100% renewable power for all by 2035. Yes, it would be great if we could all be there. Thank you much.
Thank you. Okay, transportation and mobility.
I got this. I'm Chris Ferrone. I've been a resident of Scio since 2017. I'm on this group along with Jane and Kathy. One of the overarching goals of this group is to reduce carbon emissions due to transportation. And one of the most important pathways to get there is by increasing use of EVs and PHEVs by residents in the township. So PHEVs, if you're not already familiar with, are plug-in hybrid electric vehicles. An example of a PHEV would be a Chevy Volt. But we list a number of strategies to increase the use of EVs. And one of the lowest hanging fruits for increasing their use is amending the zoning ordinances so that any new construction or reconstruction includes the installation of EV chargers. In addition to that, we want to make sure that residents are aware of EVs, of the potential incentives at the federal and the state level. We know from our survey that was one of the top ranked items that potential EV buyers were interested in. Scio Township does have its own vehicle fleet. It's relatively small. The water utility department has 3 vehicles. And in addition to that, we have the vehicles that the fire department manages. But despite the fleet being relatively small in size, we still want to try and electrify it as much as possible to reduce carbon emissions, but also to set a good example for our residents to lead by example. We recognize that one of the biggest challenges for EV adoption in the township, especially for people who live in apartments or own condos, is lack of access to charging. So we want to do everything we can in this committee to advocate for those residents and to help promote the installation of chargers at those locations. We want to advocate for the electrification of public transit vehicles and work with the relevant local authorities and transportation authorities to do everything we can to push and expedite that transition. And finally, we want to understand if there's anything we can do to help facilitate a conversation among DTE and the cluster of automotive dealerships on Jackson Road as each of the dealerships starts transitioning to sell electric vehicles and opts to install DC fast chargers. They all seem to be doing it at the same time. Perhaps if we were to facilitate some collaboration, there could be some cost savings for the dealerships and for the public as a whole. And I'll hand it over to Kathy now for reduced vehicle miles traveled.
Kathy, you're on mute.
Okay, sorry. Okay, so Kathy Juskevich, I'm on the Transportation Committee with Chris and Jane Vogel. And I wanted to point out that while encouraging the use of EVs and PHEVs, instead of having business as usual with our gasoline powered internal combustion engine vehicles, it's a comparatively easy way to reduce transportation-related greenhouse gas emissions, but we also need to find ways to reduce vehicle miles traveled. Fewer and shorter car trips mean less emissions and less energy use overall. even with EVs. So our second transportation goal is just this, to reduce vehicle miles traveled, which we plan to address in two major ways. First, our transit system needs to become an integral part of our community's mobility. We'll work with local transit providers, such as AATA and WAVE, to develop and maintain an attractive, comprehensive, reliable overall transit system that connects us within our community and also with our neighbors in a safe and equitable way. We'll also make certain that residents are informed about Scio transit options through a variety of outreach materials, such as maps and schedules linked to our township website. It's also important to encourage higher density as well as more affordable housing options close to transit lines. As a climate action goal, this will allow short and efficient commutes by transit to jobs, shopping, and other necessary services for our residents, which will reduce their carbon footprint while reducing overall housing costs. We're addressing equity and economic viability concerns here as well. The second way we will address our goal to reduce vehicle miles traveled is to advocate for our TAP committee's plans to develop multi-use or non-motorized pathways and sidewalks. We expect to partner with them, share ideas, and help advance their vision for a comprehensive, well-maintained, safe and attractive network of pathways throughout the township, well connected with pathways in neighboring communities and with our transit system. We will also work to amend our zoning ordinance to require most types of new development to provide infrastructure for bicycle parking, to encourage more use of bicycles as a viable form of transportation. A network of pathways and sidewalks and increase access to secure places for bicycle parking will add up to more residents choosing to bike or walk to relatively nearby destinations. This mobility solution reduces greenhouse gas emissions the most, and it addresses public health and equity concerns too. I'll give you back to Chris for our third and final transportation goal.
Real quickly, we've also adopted outdoor power equipment under our transportation and mobility umbrella. Even though it doesn't directly relate, there's still an opportunity to reduce carbon emissions simply by encouraging residents to switch from existing conventionally powered equipment to electric options for things such as snow blowers, chainsaws, lawnmowers. All of these electric equivalents are much quieter, easier to maintain, lower cost of ownership. There's a number of advantages, and we in this committee can work to educate residents of these advantages and help to promote these electric options. And then as a township, where feasible, we can investigate where it makes sense to convert our own equipment to electric, again, to reduce emissions and also to set a good example for our residents and to lead by example. That wraps it up from transportation and mobility. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, materials waste in the circular economy.
Okay.
Hey, Jeff, there you go.
Thank you, Charlie. I'm Jeff Jackson, and our group is working on ways that we can better deal with the waste streams generated by the township. So that's essentially embracing the 3 R's: reduce, reuse, recycle. Really, our focus is how can we keep more stuff out of the landfill and promote the circular economy. And my focus right now is on the composting side. So right now, we don't really have any good solutions for dealing with food waste generated by township residents and businesses. Organics make up anywhere from 1/3 to 1/2 of the total waste stream. And if that all winds up in the landfill, not only does it remove nutrients from further use, in other words, we can't put it back in the soil, which means we have to rely more on artificial fertilizers and such. But while it's in the landfill, before it's covered, it's breaking down anaerobically and generating methane, which is a highly potent greenhouse gas. So we want to see if there are ways that we can reduce the amount of food waste that is going to landfill. And a really good solution is to find solutions for turning that back into compost. My wife and I compost all of our food waste. We have a couple of different solutions for that. But that's one thing we as a family have taken out of the waste stream, and I think more people in the township could do the same. At the last meeting, there was a brief discussion over whether composting should be a centralized focus of the township or a decentralized effort. And my response at the time was, yes, we can do both. And so we're working on ideas both to educate the community at large so we can encourage more backyard composting. But there's also an opportunity to establish a community composting education center on the former Wren's Farm property. Project Grow is already talking with the owners about that. And my discussions with one of the directors at Project Grow was very positive. He's looking forward to working with the township to further promote the idea of composting and community gardening. And so I'm really hoping we can get something going there. In addition to residents, we're hoping that we can encourage local businesses that generate food waste to compost it. There are opportunities to do that, whether it's a collection opportunity that's run by the township, or we simply encourage folks to drop off their food waste, let's say at the Ann Arbor Compost Center. I think we have an opportunity there. And there are a couple of businesses in Ann Arbor right now that are participating in getting their food waste, Zingerman's in particular, getting at least some of their food waste to the compost center. So we have some models to work with. We have some other models that I have in other presentations. So that's where we're going with composting, and I'll turn it over to Bob Hyde for the recycling part.
Actually, Charlie, were you going to do that, or would you like me?
Yeah, did we skip a slide?
No, we're not.
No, this is the second slide.
Oh, okay, that just didn't look right. I got my order mixed up, so sorry about that. I'm Charlie Nielsen, obviously. And what I've been working on mostly is the recycling side of things, and in particular, discussions with Recycle Ann Arbor, in particular Calvert's, the recovery yard that's right here in Scio Township. And that's one of the advantages we think in dealing with them is because it's here in Scio Township. So we're supporting a local nonprofit business, actually, in this case. And anything that's taken there, whether that involves residents driving there or any form of transportation there, is obviously going to require less fuel than driving someplace further away. The basic idea here is that even though we have curbside recycling now, there are some things that are not covered, styrofoam being the big elephant in the room. And that was one of the ideas here. Can we establish a way to recycle styrofoam? And right now we're moving toward a direction that would reestablish the Saturday events that we used to have monthly at Township Hall, except that they would actually be at the Calvert site. Advantage there being, again, that solves a lot of problems with transporting these units back and forth between there, because we basically go to them. Residents don't drive that much further because it's just out west on Jackson Road rather than up at Township Hall. So there was a lot of advantages there. But that's the idea, to try to fill in some of the gaps that we currently have, and also to fill in some gaps in some of the areas that may not be covered. And we found that actually with the help of Karen making some phone calls, that primarily is going to be some of our smaller businesses. The larger big box stores, for example, seem to be pretty universally doing their own thing. Cardboard, for example, they have storage areas where they pile that up and then occasionally cart it off to some central site. They have some other location. So that's the idea there. Another big gap that we identified, of course, is Scio Farms, where I happen to live. We've got about 3,000 residents here. We have trash pickup, but no recycling whatsoever. Because mobile home communities work on a different set of rules that the township cannot override or get involved in too much. I think that's a situation where it's probably better handled if we strike a deal between the community and Recycle Ann Arbor directly. And I've already spoken to the manager here at Scio Farms as well as people at Recycle, and both of them are on board with that. It's just a matter of coming up with something that works for both parties. And that would involve some units being set up here at a designated site. And then every so often those taken, dumped, and then brought back again. We have been a little delayed just because there's been a delay in communications back from them, but we did get a proposal from them verbally that was extremely attractive to us. We just asked for it to, a form of that in writing, something that was actionable. But then right behind that, it turns out the person that we've been dealing with is moving into full retirement. So that's delayed it again, and he's trying to bring up another person to speed. And I'm just waiting now to hear from that person so that we can continue this on. But if we can just get something in writing, I think we're quite pleased with what we had. And it's something that technically could be enacted in pretty much immediately. So at least in the very short term. So I think that's about all I had. And I'll hand it off to Bob to talk about the wood situation.
Okay, so we've been talking about keeping things out of the landfill, and we also would like to talk about having lumber produced from the trees that are removed whenever we're doing development work. We all know that we try to minimize, by ordinance, we try to minimize the number of trees removed, but there often is a good number. And we have people in the community that would, right now are generating lumber and boards from trees that are harvested locally, but they only get a small number handed to them to do. Most of them are not being made into lumber, most of the trees. So what we'd like to do is work with the Board of Trustees and the Planning Commission to write ordinances for mandating harvesting of the trees rather than merely allowing removal. And we'd like to have that happen and see that when plans come up for approval that they know of these new ordinances. We'd also like to connect the local partners, identify more of them. We know of one or two or three, but there would definitely be more if we had more trees mandated to become lumber. So we'd like to set up that, we'd like the township to be involved in mandating and then in connecting the people involved. That way we would actually make money off of the tree removal. We wouldn't, but the economy would.
Do you want to just go over the idea of that industrial district briefly?
Of the
industrial district, the IDD?
Oh, it was back on the previous slide?
Yeah.
Yes. I didn't make this clear enough. If it's all right with you, Charlie, I'd just like to.
Yeah, no, go ahead. Yes, I forgot about that. Yeah.
So the Recycle Ann Arbor Recovery Yard, which Charlie was talking about on Jackson Road, had the idea that they would purchase adjacent land and try to get businesses set up there to make use of some of the recovered materials that are building materials from demolitions work. So there would also be other recycled materials that could be made into products. And that just hasn't come to fruition yet. But the idea that the township might set up an industrial development district that would allow for these businesses to perhaps get some tax abatements for a number of years in order to get set up and going. And we could encourage that and actually get more products made out of recycled material right here in the township. There'd be jobs, there'd be economics involved. It would be a win-win if we could get that set up here. That would involve the township board and the planning commission as well.
Hey, Bob, can I toss a little comment on top of that?
Go for it.
Hey, I was just attending the virtual National Recycling Conference earlier last week. And one of the presentations is on something called a resource recovery park, which is exactly what we're talking about here, a sort of one-stop shopping where you can bring just about anything you want to this one area, and it'll all be sorted there at the facility and then made use of to the best extent possible. I was surprised to find out there are already several of these resource recovery parks already operating in the country, and more are planned. So there are some models that we could build on if we wanted to there. I would be excited about this myself.
Okay, sorry about taking more time.
Oh, no, that's okay. Chief Hood.
Hello, everybody. So I'm Andy Hood, Scio Township's Fire Chief, working with the Climate Resilience and Emergency Preparedness Group. And, really our big goals here are be able to handle extreme weather events with minimal or no loss of life or destruction of property, and also work on the recovery event after something does happen. So one of the things we talked about in our group is hardened utilities. As we work towards electrification, our electrical grid will be much more important. In my experience, these wind events and such tend to knock down a lot of power lines. We can locate those underground, help prevent those power outages from occurring. Another thing we talked about was flood control, focus on managing heavy precipitation events through various functions, improve our existing stormwater management systems, establish a central flood reporting system so we can actually see where we're having issues, and identify funding to help remediate or mitigate these issues. One other thing we talked about was resilience hubs within the township. Those are, if you're familiar with, warming centers that the city or other big organizations may do. A resilience hub is that plus a little more, where if, for example, we look at, say, Scio Farms or any of our other larger neighborhoods, we're able to set up places where we can not only take care of folks when these events occur, but also get them food, get them some water in the short term. Coordinate services and capacity with Washtenaw County. The county has a pretty robust system in place. However, being a larger organization, it takes longer to get that system up and running, whereas as a local unit of government, we can do that quicker. And again, identify funding to help with these resilience hubs. Promote solar with battery storage for residents needing backup power. I think that ties in with some of the other things we've talked about this evening. But if we have more residents looking towards a solar array with their own battery backup, even when power does go out, there's less folks that need additional assistance. And then last but not least, manage open spaces within the community. The community's taken steps to preserve open spaces and maintain them as such. However, that does increase fire risk, especially with the climate change effects we're seeing. So we can look to some of these bigger areas and help mitigate fire risk. And as well, even in our smaller neighborhoods, work to mitigate those risks on a local level, a small level, versus our larger farms or open spaces. And this is also appropriate for our parks and preserves.
Thank you very much. All right. Then I'm going to stop sharing and go to our student team. They're going to talk a little bit about, in March, the teams came up with some goals, and the students then took some of the goals that were presented tonight and did some community engagement. And so they're going to present a little bit about the community feedback and there are also, because you can't summarize all of that community feedback, they've assembled some very nice reports, and so those can continue to be reference documents for us moving forward. So go ahead, C's team.
Hey Jan, yeah, I'm not seeing an option to share my screen here. I think you may need to give me permission as a co-host to do that.
Here we go. Everybody should be able to share. Okay, okay, try it now. See if that works.
Oh, here we go. Okay, thank you, Jan.
Great.
All right. Oh, whoops. I think just a moment. All right. Can everyone see my screen? All right, I will take the silence as a yes. Okay, so I'm Anna. I'm here with the rest of the team. Thanks again for having us present today. So yeah, I'm here with Alicia, Kyle, Zoe, and Whitney. We'll all be taking turns chatting. And really, we'll be going over the community engagement work we did in Scio over the summer, talking about our interviewing and surveying process, and then also doing kind of a broad overview on the results from that community engagement. So getting right into the interview process. So we started by creating our interview guide, or essentially a list of questions for our interviewees. So we consulted with the task force just to make sure that the questions that we were asking were actually going to be of use to them and to all the working groups that are part of the task force. And we also got some expert opinions as well. So we worked with our faculty advisor, who's an expert in social research methods, and consulted some literature as well. Next, we identified the interviewees. So once again, we got help from the task force, each of the working groups, to identify some contacts from key interest groups within the township. And we actually also were, as we were doing the interviews, we were asking interviewees as well to really expand that network and ensure we were representing as many groups as possible. Next, we carried out the interviews. So we did 10 total interviews with representatives from the following groups. So that includes the Scio Township staff and elected officials, the Scio Fire Department, the Transportation Alternatives Planning Committee, or TAP, the Land Preservation Commission, or LPC, the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board, and then some local farm owners as well. And so all of the interviewees, they will remain anonymous. However, in our report, we provide the key interest group that they're a part of to really provide some additional context and support for some of the input that each of them provided. And it's also worth mentioning that it just wasn't feasible to provide like a comprehensive list of all the goals and strategies that the 5 working groups created. So for each interviewee, we essentially created a sub list of goals and strategies that were most relevant to the expertise and the key interest group that interviewee was a part of. And that did result in getting input for all 5 of the working groups. So we do have that feedback for everyone available, essentially. And then finally, we analyzed and we reported on those findings. So we transcribed all our interview recordings. We coded and categorized those transcriptions based on common themes and topics of interest for the working group. So again, making sure that we were really reporting on the most useful information. And then finally, we created a comprehensive and detailed report, which Whitney will be talking about more now.
Great. So now moving on to the content that's in our interview report. We separated it based on our working groups in the township. So that's 5 main sections. There are also sections that included current sustainability practices that our interviewees suggested that their organizations are currently working on. There were education and engagement and communication recommendations. And then there were also leaders and partners that the interviewee suggested would be good collaborators with the township. But then more specifically in each working group, there were subsections. And so we separated them out based on recommended additional goals or strategies that the interviewee suggested. So these sections included any strategies or goals that the interviewees proposed that supported existing goals or strategies from the working groups. There was also a subsection about recommended modifications to goals and strategies, which included just suggestions that the interviewees proposed to already existing goals as well. Measurements of goals and strategies was another subsection, which the interviewees suggested for how the plans for the goals should be measured. There was also an opportunity section that included loose potential strategies or goals related to each working group that may be worth exploring, but may not be specific to an existing goal or strategy. We also created a policy subsection, which included any policies that the interviewee discussed that may be relevant to the working groups. And then lastly, in each working group, we added an area of concern section, which includes any concerns that were expressed by the interviewees relevant to each working group. And so that's the content that you guys can find in the interview report. And I'm going to now send it over to our survey group.
Okay, cool. So yeah, transitioning into the survey. Just to go over the survey process a little bit, last spring is when we developed our survey based off of the goals and strategies that the task force ended up narrowing down to be prioritized. Then during the summer, we did our outreach, which included contacting HOAs, sharing the survey on the newsletter, the website, and the township Facebook page. And then by the end of the summer, we ended up with about 283 responses, which we have been analyzing this fall. Yeah, so for demographics, based on our survey, we found that 60% of our respondents were 55 years or older. Related to that, 17% of residents, based on Scio Township demographics, are over the age of 65. But for our survey respondents, 39% were 65 or older. For income, we found that over 50% of respondents earned over 120K per year. 13% earn less than 50K per year. Currently, 4% of Scio's actual residents are in poverty, with 5% of our survey respondents earning less than 35K per year. 7% earned between 35K and 50K. So we also found that 81% of respondents live in a house. 93% actually own their home. And yeah, so 6% live in an apartment, 5% live in a manufactured home. And the remaining 7% rent inside a township instead of own their home. Go ahead. Okay, so here we laid out the race and ethnicity demographics based on our survey, and then also the demographics in Scio Township, so you guys can see the comparisons here. And based on our survey, we found that 86% of respondents were white or Caucasian, followed by 6% Asian or Pacific Islander, 4% Black or African American, 2% were Latinx or Hispanic, and 2% were Native American or Alaska Native. And you can see the comparisons on the right. Okay, cool. So the questions regarding just general climate knowledge or concern about climate change, including like Scio Township's primary goal, we found that the majority of respondents supported the goal to reach net zero carbon emissions for the township government by 2030 and for the entire township by 2035. We found that the majority of respondents support or understand the causes and consequences of climate change. Well, 0% of respondents did not understand the causes and consequences of climate change. We found that 93% of residents and respondents are concerned about the impacts of climate change in Scio Township, and 30% of those were extremely concerned. And over here, extreme heat, power outages, and crop failures were the main concerns that the respondents had based on the climate impacts that we posed to them. I'll turn over to Alicia.
Thanks, Zoe. So looking at the first working group, we asked questions for the energy and buildings group, and especially looking at what was going to be an effective intervention that Scio Township could do that would encourage respondents to either increase electrification or improve their efficiency, whether that's water or energy inside of their homes. And by and large, we found that information about existing rebates and discounts was really effective for encouraging residents to take these actions. We also looked at what policies might be supported by residents, and over 70% of respondents said that they support these three policies. So looking at a building tune-up, expediting permitting for renewable energy infrastructure, as well as requiring that all new buildings meet new building performance requirements. For the next working group, we looked at transportation and mobility, and we asked very similar questions. So we proposed a number of policies that the working group has provided, and residents overall supported all of these policies. So these were installing public EV charging stations throughout the township, as well as allowing and promoting the installation of EV charging stations, both in residential as well as commercial areas, and that includes multifamily housing, and also requiring that a portion of newly constructed parking lots be EV charging capable. In terms of what we could do to encourage residents to purchase EVs or EV chargers, again, information about rebates and discounts was highly effective. Other things that respondents voiced was that access to chargers both in the community and in the home would be really helpful for them. And then looking at the other goal for the transportation mobility group, this was reducing the numbers of miles driven in personal vehicles, and residents were really supportive of decreasing the miles driven in personal vehicles by up to 25%. And some effective strategies that would help people do this really centered around public transit. So expanding safe and accessible and comprehensive public transit within Scio Township, but then also connecting that system to neighboring jurisdictions like Ann Arbor. In addition to public transit, there was a lot of support for increasing the amount of miles of bike lanes as well as walkways, and then ensuring that these are safe within Scio Township. So really focusing on connectivity. And then I'll pass it off to the next person.
Yeah, so for our next working group, we have materials and waste. And our questions for this group focused on the four topics: composting, gardening, recycling, and community cleanup, as this seemed to be representative of the working group's goals that you heard a little bit about before, but including increasing household and business composting, along with identifying a community composting area, increasing recycling and reuse, and organizing community cleanup events. So our survey results showed, thank you, that in regard to composting, 38% of respondents already compost, and less than 5% claim to have no interest in composting, which is great, as it seems there's potentially a lot of untapped interest. And based on the responses, it seemed as though the most useful interventions would be the opening of a community composting facility and education in regard to composting. Next, for gardening, our survey indicated that 43% of respondents already garden at home. However, 55% of respondents claim that they would not make use of a community garden, indicating that this is not likely to be a useful strategy to pursue. So instead, maybe encouraging gardening at home would be more beneficial. Next, in regard to recycling, many respondents claimed that no intervention was necessary, likely indicating that they already have curbside recycling pickup at home. However, for those that don't, it seems as though expanding the coverage of curbside pickup and or the opening of a community recycling facility in Scio would be beneficial and were supported by more than a third of respondents. And then finally, with regard to community cleanup, 45% of respondents indicated that they would prefer cleanup events organized in their neighborhoods, and that email notifications for these events would be the most useful means of communication. And yeah, our next working group is emergency preparedness. And our questions for this group focused mainly on solar installation and fire safety to reflect some of the working group's goals, including increasing solar in Scio and fire safe management practices. So for solar, the survey results indicated that providing information on rebates and discounts would encourage the most residents to consider solar, as 55% of respondents indicated that this would increase their likelihood of installing solar at their own homes. And then for fire safety, respondents indicated that providing information and education in regard to the pros and cons of different fire safe management options would be most impactful when it comes to increasing their fire safe management practices at their own homes.
Okay, so for the natural ecosystems and food systems group, we found that 88% of respondents support or extremely support increasing the quantity of green space in the township. Of that, 66% extremely support. Based on the policies that we posed to them, we found that the majority of respondents supported increasing the quantity and quality of green space in the community based on those policies. And the majority of respondents supported the policies to mitigate flooding in Scio Township as well. For tree canopy coverage, we found that 86% of residents support increasing canopy coverage in the township. And then for food systems, we found 86% of respondents supported utilizing land conservation techniques for farmers, and 71% consider it important to know where their food comes from. So the next steps for our team for next semester and our final semester with Scio include developing an ongoing iterative engagement plan so that the township can continue to engage Scio residents and key interest groups for the climate action plan. And then our second task will be helping to transition the new SEAS team into their Scio Township project, in which they will be assisting with the implementation of the climate action plan, which is super cool. And that is all. That is our presentation. Thank you for having us.
Great. Thank you for all your good work. And what we're going to do now is we're going to go into breakout rooms. We'll have just 15 minutes in those breakout rooms. We'll have one in the Township Hall, just because that'll be easier with people here who don't have computers. And I have combined, just because of the number of people that we have attending, I've combined the breakout rooms. And now I have to, a second. I minimized my screen and I lost my breakout rooms. Okay.
How do people find
We'll open the rooms and then people will be able to choose which rooms they go in. So I combined energy, buildings, and emergency preparedness, materials, waste, and transportation and mobility, and then natural ecosystems and local food systems has their own group. So with that, I'm going to open the rooms and we're asking people to specifically answer, what are your key takeaways from this? What resonates with you? We obviously have really good township support for sustainability and climate action plan. And then, so key takeaways, and then what is essential for you to see in the recommendations? Is there anything missing? And we may not have time to actually come back and, summarize that. We're going to try. But if not, then we just have a quick 3-minute kind of final implementation and where we go next. So with that, yeah.
Are you going to have the people record the?
Yeah, if each group, there should be a note taker. And then I don't think we're going to have time because we just have 15 minutes in the breakout rooms. So we're going to go in there and you'll get a 60-second warning that the breakout rooms are going to close. So I'm going to open the breakout rooms, and if you could kind of distribute yourself, that'd be great. So I think you're going to have to choose which breakout room you're going in. And people are slowly choosing their breakout rooms. Okay,
We're going to be in one here.
Which group are you doing? We're just going to take general notes here, so.
Who's going to be our note taker? Do we have a secretary?
I will take notes.
Oh, okay. I was hoping Chris would vote.
How do we move to these breakout rooms, Jan?
What's that? Yeah, choose your breakout room based on your preference, or, well, and what group you're in.
How do you choose the breakout room?
You should be able to, it should come up on your screen.
Didn't.
In the bottom next to.
I just see people's disappearing, but I don't see any option for me to join any group.
There's a box that showed up on mine, Charlie, at the, oh, he disappeared now.
It's been one of those days for him. I'm not surprised.
Charlie, down at the bottom, does it say share screen, record, breakout rooms?
No, there's no, well, wait a minute. Maybe it's under more. Aha, there we go. Thank you.
All right, it's under more, yes.
See ya. Oh, so people decided they didn't want to join, so they left.
Yeah, they're going, they wanted to join others. Okay, so the feedback that we wanted to get was, one, what do you see, you know, of one with all those groups, what do you see as, you know, essential and of a priority? And since most of you are planning commission members, you know, the roles that you see for us ahead, yeah, and one trustee, yeah, hi. You know, this is obviously, there's a lot of, there's a community engagement, but then there's the ordinance and the policies and that type of thing. So just sort of your thoughts and.
I saw a ton of support for green space, like for natural growth, trees and whatnot like that. That seemed to be, you know, in the survey section that we just watched, there was that seemed to have the most consensus from anybody who was polled. Which I'm not surprised by that.
And it seems like there's a lot of support, and we could also do a lot of codifying, and I can tell from just PUDs, we can get the EV charging stations, we can get solar power, we can do a lot of sustainability issues, even requiring even maybe more open space. So just that's what we're doing in PUDs, but if we codify it into new projects, it seems like that's just going to be a requirement. It's not going to be a public benefit, it's going to be required.
Not just a public benefit.
Right.
Okay, so yeah, putting it in, and, you know, Doug, we can talk about that too, how you know, what things are incentivized in the PUD versus what things we can actually put in the specific ordinances themselves. Okay, other takeaways?
Hey, some support. I mean, I was surprised to hear this. For public transportation, greater public transportation, I mean, I don't know how the concept will materialize or how, I mean, and we never discussed that during the meeting, of course. But if that is indeed a concept that has support and funding, I guess, I mean, I would personally be very interested to know more about it. And if what I heard, if I heard it right, that there's a lot of support for it. Again, I'm not clear. It came as a big surprise to me. Public transportation, yeah.
Especially with like those higher density proposals. You know, they should have a bus stop, AATA, something there to.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean.
Yeah, it's really difficult to fund public transportation for low-density areas, but certainly, yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, hi, Jan.
Hi.
Nice to see everybody.
Welcome. You can come closer if you
Okay.
want.
Well, it's kind of nice to sit back here. Come in late, put on my jacket, you know, act like the teenager I believe I still am. So I thought the group did an awesome job. I mean, when I talked to them and things, I guess I have like two general remarks. One is that I think as a township across the areas, we're going to be better at the codification, going really aggressive on that deliberate codification, policies, implementation. I think the community education, the program development is not a township strong suit. I think that takes a different type of ongoing capacity that a city or a county might have, but we're probably not going to have. It's my observation, open to ideas, but that the policies and the code changes where we can really make a difference. And then with it's really a question with public transit, with our bus millage coming up for renewal. It's one of those things that sort of floated around. We tried to have TAP take it on. You know, nobody's really led on that. And so kind of a question for us, is there anything we should be looking at in that bus millage renewal that we can use to further some of these goals? I don't know. So
What's the timing on that renewal?
it's soon. It's 2023. Yeah.
So that's a key piece we need to put in the plan.
Yeah, and it is, and no one here at the township has kind of been carrying it, and I personally don't know the history of it. I think it's just we've had one 10-year bus mill, if anybody knows.
Right.
Yeah, 110 mill. Yeah, 110 years. So
Up and down Jackson Road.
that's right. And so we need to look at that and who the stakeholders are.
Some of that money goes to WAVE too, but.
Yeah, good. So
That's a really good point. Thanks. Yeah, Bob.
Just to address one item there, the public education. Some of our thoughts is to make the township website more robust.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't know whether there's any plans on having anybody be a web guru.
Yeah, we just need somebody with the skills.
We do.
That's what we don't have.
And we can coordinate the dissemination of that. We can make it so that the residents can come there and find things that we want them to find.
Absolutely.
So that's the public education piece.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Don't have a manager, don't have a finance director.
I have, Rob, I have you in our group. Do you have some comments that you want to make?
You may not have made a choice and walked away.
Yeah, it could have been.
I was,
Yeah, go ahead.
if Rob is not available. I found it interesting, the people that were polled. I mean, it sounds like, you know, those groups are stakeholders like TAP. But I wonder if there's a sufficient amount of cross-planning. So for instance, it's natural ecosystems and agriculture. One of the things she mentioned was, you know, tree canopy coverage. Now, I heard that TAP was recently looking at putting a pathway down Marshall Road on the north side. Now, to do that, you'd have to tear up all the trees along the north side. We're talking old trees here. Some of them are dying out themselves, but I don't know where these people are making these ideas. People can walk down Marshall Road right now. Why would we fool with such a beautiful tree canopy or take down trees for a path? Now, it's true, you walk down the side of the road and you have to be cognizant of traffic and that. But I just thought about it. I mean, they interviewed TAP and it just seemed to me there's some disconnect between what people are doing in these various committees and stuff. And I don't want to take up time yet. I'm sure people have the reasons for a path, because paths are real popular right now. But I wonder, it doesn't feel like there's a full breadth of discussion about things. There's this pocket over here doing this, and this pocket over here doing this, and then there's the pocket of sustainability over here. And so I can have my concerns about that, so.
Yeah, no, I think that's, and we might want to, look at that organization of committees and commissions and in the light of sustainability and trying
Yeah, there's room for improvement there for sure.
Organizationally.
I heard about that path on Marshall Road.
On the north
It's
side.
been there for a while on the map. When they were challenged about it, they said, oh, no, that was just an idea. It isn't going to happen, but we've got it.
But there's a plan for a January meeting about doing it.
There is? Yeah, I didn't know. I mean, it's.
I got that from a neighbor. I didn't even know anything about it.
Yeah, I know that Ann is being asked to kind of look at bringing the committees together. And I would say for this group's work, ongoing, I do think we need some, staff capacity to kind of, I think in one of the job descriptions when it didn't come to fruition, but when we were imagining the kind of project manager, sustainability person, we were imagining that person to be like the chief climate officer or something, somebody who's really, held to account for these efforts.
An in-house position?
Yes.
Yeah, and certainly not, only that, but, we have so much work that we could be doing. And I do think, I defer to your expertise on, another group from Cs and others, it's probably both. But we need to kind of build this into somebody's job here.
Rob, I see you have your hand up.
Hi. Sorry, I couldn't unmute fast enough earlier when you asked. What Jessica was just talking about is exactly what Kim was talking about, is that there's no coordination between the different groups. And if we could get in-house staff with that sort of expertise, that chief climate officer, project manager, whatever, that would be a long step forward. And I loved the part about using the trees for local sawmills and that sort of thing, local projects. I loved that the shelters at Marshall Park were made out of the old barn. I hated that they were built so poorly. They basically need to be rebuilt. I hope they didn't pay that bill. That's all I've got. But I've enjoyed this so far.
Thank you very much. So what?
Can I just ask, Mr. Pattison, do you have a video
No, I don't.
capability? Okay. I hear you respond in so many of our meetings and I've never met you. I know that voice. I know that voice from anywhere.
Well, I apologize for how much you hear this voice.
No, I'm not complaining about that.
Beautiful voice, Rob. You know it.
And my mother is 92 years old, and so I am taking care of her. I'm the caregiver, and so I've been super protective of that. And as soon as the pandemic is long gone, then I will be out in public again.
Yay, Rob, thank you for doing that.
Absolutely.
We'll have to get together, these folks that are taking care of their 90-year-old moms.
And Joe pays attention too, so she may be listening now. I know, Rob.
As a matter of fact, she is.
Hi, Joe.
All right, we have about 1 minute left before I bring everybody back. Any other items?
I just want to know where I could learn more about this bus millage renewal that nobody's carrying. I don't really know anything about it, but I'd like to know more about it.
Yes. You know what?
Where do I learn more about that?
Email me and let's start digging, because somebody needs to take it on. I'm happy to volunteer to help. It's some history I don't know, but I'm sure we can ask a few people around here.
Yeah, and it's interesting, it's our first time, and so my sense was that we're paying to connect up to Meyer, come out here for our residents or people that work in Scio Township.
Exactly.
And so you have this express, not really express, but it's just up and down Jackson Road.
Yeah. Doesn't seem like anybody's using that, does it? Are they?
I don't know what the ridership is. Do we get reports on that?
You know, I saw some a while ago. They're light.
Yeah. People weren't riding as much.
Right.
Yeah, the
That's
pandemic
what's
changed
tough.
It's a little skewed.
Right now, yeah.
And weren't we saying that
But even pre-pandemic, it was pretty light.
the wave was going to come to the retirement community?
Heritage.
Heritage.
That had been thrown out there, but no plans.
Well, I mean, so we have developments.
Everybody's
that
coming back.
need the lessons.
All right, everybody's coming back. Planning Commission has to convene in 5 minutes, so I'm gonna just do a really fast, whoops, shoot. Guess I just did something wrong. If people could, we're not gonna have time to recap, but we caught some really good notes, and so if people will, all the recorders, type up your notes, and then we'll share it and we'll upload it as part of this meeting so people can see that feedback. I just want to quickly share a couple things, and that's, can you, is my slide up? No, that's weird. There we go. I just want to say, just in implementation, we need staff support. We need some sort of sustainability manager coordinator. We need to have a permanently skilled volunteer group to support these efforts. It would be great if we could establish an ambassador program. We have the curriculum from the 820 ambassador program, but again, it would take a volunteer and some ongoing folks to train people in neighborhoods and so forth. We really need to build on the resources that Washtenaw County and 820 have. And we need to maximize the use of our website. That's going to be our least expensive vehicle for getting the word out. And if we improve the quality and the resources on it, people will start using it, and not just use it for sustainability, but all sorts of other things. And it'd be awesome to establish an annual event to celebrate our progress, do education, hands-on education, et cetera. And with that, where we're going next is, okay, we have at our meeting, Resilient Washtenaw Plan will get approved next month. And we're targeting having our climate action plan with the budgeting process, talk about leadership, responsibility, and that a permanent volunteer group coming to get approved in March. So that means we're gonna start running things by folks in February. And then we hope if we can get another SEAS team, that team's project would be helping out with the community engagement that we don't have the capacity to do. So that's kind of the plan moving forward. And with that, I'm going to close out this meeting so that we can start our Planning Commission meeting. And I want to thank everyone's time. And this was recorded. It'll be available. The presentations are already uploaded, and we'll add these notes. So thank you so much, and thank you,
I'd just like to thank you, Chairperson Culberson, for your leadership in this area. Thanks a lot.
Well, thanks, and Jackie and Jane as well, and each of the, I'm just astounded at the quality of the volunteer leadership that we have on this committee. So thank you, everyone, and good night.
Thank you.
Can we take a 5-minute break?
Thank you.
Yep.